Hello, I decided to make a video about unsuccessful transitions. I will tell a few rules that I usually told to everyone who start editing video, but I just want to say these are the rules for beginners. In the future, you will need to learn how to edit video not according to the rules, but in such the way as to achieve the goal. And yet, I just want to say, you will often find yourself in a situation where you have no choice but to break the rule. I mean make the wrong transition. This will happen because the director needs to think a lot ahead, so that it has next frames suitable for leaving the current frame. Please take these moments as small but golden coins in the piggy bank of your experience. So, what is the bad transition? This is the transition that the viewer pays attention to. Visible transition for the viewer. Let's start in the transition between frames in the same size.
Back to that, how much more passion does Jesus deserve than the St. Louis Blues in my life and in your life? Isn't that so true? So we are passionate about Jesus. We are learning about Jesus. That's number two. You're never too young.
Even if there are different people in the frame, and even more so if it's one person. To avoid this, you need to prepare others' frame. Okay. Now let's talk about the transition to the frame of the next size, up or down. Let's list the frames if we shoot one person on stage. We may have an overall frame that captures the width of the stage and the people the front of the stage. A frame in which a person is in full growth, not as wide as the previous one. Knee-length frame. Frame to the waist. Frame to the elbow or to the chest. Close-up where there is one head on the frame. A detailed plan where only the eyes are in the frame, or only the mouth or hands. So you don't have to go in the order. You need to either step over one or more shots. Or change subject. An exception may be if you want to realize some kind of artistic idea. Next one, return to the frame that was recently. It can be any plane, general or close-up, it doesn't matter. This rule is often broken when the worship is filmed and the lead vocalist and musicians are shown in turn. Or when you need to return the person who started the speech but did not have time to prepare another camera. Sometimes this transition is imperceptible at long frame. The next mistake is the transition from the camera on one side of the hall to the camera on the other side. Imagine the line dividing the hall in two, from the preacher to the back wall. You cannot jump over this line so that the preacher changes the direction of his gaze, like he's talking to his twin brother. It is especially bad to do this with the same size or similar size. And it's like the first two rules. There is a similar rule when shooting dialogue. There, this line can be crossed only in the movement of the frame. The next one is jumping to a frame with a framing error.
With Jesus. A conversation with Jesus is just praying. Prayer is a conversation. Imagine.
And as the people came into Jerusalem, they had to walk up these steps to go to the temple.
An inharmonious arrangement of objects in the frame will attract attention to itself. The next thing will distract the viewer, the transition from dynamic frame to a very static one. Although in the cinema this technique is skillfully used in thrillers, but it's not suitable for live streaming. I really love live cameras, shooting from hand and from stabilizers, but the problem always that they're difficult to combine with static cameras on tripod. The solution is that you need more dynamics for cameras on tripods, following the gaze of the preacher, panning, zooming, using a slider, using cards or other mechanisms. Next, I want to talk about transition related to camera actions. There is important not only to which frame you went, but also how you left the frame. You know when the camera just started moving and the director immediately switched. It is always noticeable. I really love zooms and pans, but you should avoid transitioning immediately before or after the camera action. It is very good when the operator starts the action before he is put on the air, and also with the end of the action. It is worth avoiding a sharp start and stop of the camera movement in the frame. It is fair to say that such a movement can start so smoothly that it will not attract attention. Now the thinnest part, the choice of the moment of transition. Once I heard from the video director that you need to change a frame in the pauses of speech. But I wouldn't just bind to transition to an event type. The transition that regularly occurs at the same time as the action in the frame becomes noticeable. The transition in the middle of the pause can be like a sound in silence. When you do editing on the computer after shooting, you can choose the moment and see what expression you get. This is a good workout. In my experience, I have found 2 points for the transition: moments before or moments after some event. An event can be considered an action in a frame or a sound, pause, ending thought, head turn, hand gesture. I notice that it's better to avoid switching exactly at the moment of action, so that the viewer can clearly see and understand the action. Action can be important to convey meaning, for emotional reinforcement of speech. Let's imagine that the preacher is turning. We can switch moments before the action starts to the camera towards which he will turn, and we kind of predict the action. And we can switch to this camera a moment after the end of the action. Then we kind of confirm this action. That is, the preacher turned, and the viewer already expects that he is speaking in a certain direction, and we switch as if justifying the viewer's expectations. Thus, the transition remains natural.
Слышал от Бога, и благословение есть и сейчас. Благословение – это не просто то, что ты зарабатываешь или заслужил, там, или так далее. Благословение – это нечто большее, чем это. Нечто большее, чем это. Теперь смотрите. Здесь написано, притча 10:22. Мне нравится это. Благословение Господне. Благословение Господне. Благословение Господне. Оно обогащает и печали с собой не приносит.
I like to switch in the middle of the word, but sometimes we can switch in the pause, emphasizing the idea. Just not the constancy of such a transition will enhance this effect. Imagine that the preacher speaks a thought and ends it with a pause. At this moment he can expect the reaction of the audience. He can look into the audience, and we can switch to the general plan in the middle of the pause. Maybe otherwise, we can switch from the wide shot to the preacher's view in the middle of the pause. That is emphasizing that the thought is over. Of course, these actions more lack for a live broadcast, but sometimes we can anticipate bad transition and avoid it, especially if we know the style of the preacher's behavior. We talked more about preaching, but for music, transitions to the rhythm work very well, but not all the time. Sometimes you need to move away from the rhythm. For example, lingering on a solo or a vocalist. I think we've covered enough today. One, I want to get rid of the term wrong or right transition in our reasoning. Let's say successful transition, and then we argue why and how it would be better. Thank you for your attention, and bye.